Good afternoon. Welcome to video number 4 for our Hatchet by Gary Paulson. Today we're going to be finishing lesson 2, this version of Hatchet by Gary Paulson, pages 18 to 24 to finish off the chapter. Okay, and as usual, we're going to be doing read-along vocabulary. So let's read along together. We're starting at the microphone on page 18. Let's get started. The microphone. Awareness cut into him. He had used the CB radio in his uncle's pickup once. You had to turn the mic switch off to hear anybody else. He reached to his belt and released the switch. For a second, all he heard was the whoosh of the empty airwaves. Then, through the noise and static, he heard a voice. Whoever is calling on this radio net, I repeat, release your mic switch. You are covering me. You are covering me. Over. It stopped and Brian hit his mic switch. I hear you. I hear you. This is me. He released the switch. Roger, I have you now. The voice was very faint and breaking up. Please state your difficulty and location, and say over to signal the end of transmission. Over. The transmission. The act or process of transmitting something. In this case, radio waves sending a message. So he speaks into the radio and it makes radio waves. So that is transmission. Let's continue. Please state my difficulty. Brian thought, God, my difficulty? I am in a plane with a pilot he can't fly, and I don't know how to fly. Help me, help. He turned off his mic without ending transmission properly. There was a moment's hesitation before the answer. Your signal is breaking up, and I lost most of it. Understand. Pilot, you can't fly? Correct? Over? There's a difficulty. A thing that is hard to accomplish, deal with, or understand. Brian is having many difficulties in the story right now. Overall, difficulty. Let's continue. Brian could barely hear him now. Heard mostly noise and static. That's right, I can't fly. The plane is flying now, but I don't know how much longer. Over. Lost signal. Your location, please. Flight number. Location. Ver. I don't know my flight number or location. I don't know anything. I told you that. Over. He waited now. Waited, but there was nothing. Once, for a second, he thought he heard a break in the noise, some part of a word, but it could have been static. 2, 3 minutes, 10 minutes. The plane roared and Brian listened, but heard no one. Then he hit the switch again. I do not know the flight number. My name is Brian Robinson, and we left Hampton, New York, headed for the Canadian oil fields to visit my father. And I do not know how to fly an airplane. And the pilot, he let go of the mic. His voice was starting to rattle. And he felt as if he might start screaming at any second. He took a deep breath. If there's anybody listening who can help me fly a plane, please answer. Again, he released the mic, but heard nothing but the hissing of noise in the headset. After half an hour of listening and repeating the cry for help, he tore the headset off in frustration and threw it to the floor. It all seemed so hopeless. Even if he did get somebody, what could anybody do? Tell him to be careful? All so hopeless. He tried to figure out the dials again. He thought he might know which was speed. It was a lighted number that read 160. but he didn't know if that was actual miles an hour or kilometers, or if it just meant how fast the plane was moving through the air and not over the ground. He knew airspeed was different from ground speed, but not by how much. Parts of books he'd read about flying came to him, how wings worked, how the propeller pulled the plane through the sky, simple things that wouldn't help him now. Nothing could help him now. Okay, one of our vocabulary. Propeller. 추진자, a mechanical device for propelling a boat or aircraft, consisting of a revolving shaft with two or more broad-angled blades attached to it. Propeller. Let's continue. An hour passed. He picked up the headset and tried again. It was, he knew, in the end, all he had, but there was no answer. He felt like a prisoner, kept in a small cell. It was hurtling through the sky at what he thought to be 160 miles an hour. Headed, he didn't know where, just headed somewhere until, there it was. Until what? Until he ran out of fuel? When the plane ran out of fuel, it would go down. Period. Or he could pull the throttle back out. The engine would slow down and the plane would go down. Throttle. Jojo pun? Throttle. The device that controls the flow of fuel or power to an engine. So more gas, less gas. Less gas and the plane will go down. More gas, the plane will go faster. So he has a choice. He can throttle the plane to go down or wait until there's no more fuel. Let's continue. Those were his choices. He could wait for the plane to run out of gas and fall, or he could push the throttle in and make it happen sooner. If we waited for the plane to run out of fuel, he would go farther, but he did not know which way he was moving. When the pilot had jerked, he had moved the plane, but Brian could not remember how much, or if it had come back to its original course. Since he did not know the original course anyway, and only guess at which display might be the compass, the one reading 342, he did not know where he had been or where he was going, so it didn't make much difference if he went down now or waited. Everything in him rebelled against stopping the engine and falling now. He had a vague feeling that he was wrong to keep heading as the plane was heading, a feeling he might be going off in the wrong direction. But he could not bring himself to stop the engine and fall. Now he was safe, or safer than if he went down. The plane was flying. He was still breathing. When the engine stopped, he would go down. So he left the plane running, holding altitude, and kept trying the system, the radio. He worked out a system. Every 10 minutes, by the small clock built into the dashboard, he tried to radio with a simple message. I need help. Is there anybody listening to me? In the times between transmissions, he tried to prepare himself for what he knew was coming. When he ran out of fuel, the plane would start down. He guessed that without the propeller pulling, he would have to push the nose down to keep the plane flying. He thought he may have read that somewhere, or it just came to him. Either way, it made sense. He would have to push the nose down to keep flying speed, and then, just before he hit, he would have to pull the nose back up to slow the plane as much as possible. It all made sense. Glide down, then slow the plane and hit. Hit. He would have to find a clearing as he went down. The problem was that he hadn't seen one clearing since they'd started flying over the forest. Some swamps, but they had trees scattered through them. No roads, no trails, no clearing. It's clearing. Clearing is a tract of land cleared of wood and brush. It's a grassy field. He wants to land a plane on a grassy field, not in the trees. The trees are too dangerous. He needs a clearing. Okay? Clearing. Let's continue. Just the lakes. And it came to him that he would have to use a lake for landing. If he went down in the trees, he was certain to die. The trees would tear the plane to pieces as it went into them. He would have to come down in a lake. No, on the edge of a lake. He would have to come down near the edge of a lake and try to slow the plane as much as possible just before he hit the water. Easy to say, he thought, hard to do. Easy say, hard do. Easy say, hard do. It became a chant that beat with the engine. Easy say, hard do. Impossible to do. Impossible. Not able to occur, exist, or be done. Impossible. Brian thinks it's impossible to land the plane. Let's continue. He repeated the radio call 17 times at 10-minute intervals, working on what he could do between transmissions. Once more, he reached over to the pilot and touched him on the face, but the skin was cold hard. Cold. Death cold. And Brian turned back to the dashboard. He did what he could. Tightened his seatbelt, positioned himself, rehearsed mentally again and again what his procedure should be. When the plane ran out of gas, he should hold the nose down and head for the nearest lake and try to fly the plane kind of onto the water. That's how he thought of it. Kind of fly the plane onto the water. And just before it hit, he should pull back on the wheel and slow the plane to reduce the impact. Over and over his mind ran the picture of how it would go. The plane running out of gas, flying the plane onto the water, the crash. From pictures he'd seen on television, he tried to visualize it. He tried to be ready for it. But between the 17th and 18th radio transmissions, without a warning, the engine coughed, roared violently for a second, and died. There was a sudden silence, cut only by the sound of the wind milling propeller and the wind past the cockpit. Brian pushed the nose of the plane down and threw up. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 2. Let's review our vocabulary really quickly for pages 18 to 24. Transmission, 무선 운송. The action or process of transmitting something, in this case radio waves sending a message. Difficulty, 어려움, a thing that is hard to accomplish, deal with, or understand. Propeller, 추진자, a mechanical device for propelling a boat or aircraft consisting of a revolving shaft with 2 or more blades. So this is propeller. Throttle, a device controlling the flow of fuel or power to the engine. Okay, so this is a throttle on a motorcycle, bikes, cars, airplanes, they all have throttles. Clearing, 개천지, a tract of land cleared of wood or brush, or a field, just clear area. Impossible, not able to occur, exist, or be done. Impossible. Okay, let's look at my recap for the chapter. What is happening? Pages 18 to 24 in Hatchet. So, Brian finds someone on the radio, on the CB radio. But then the signal is too far and he stops hearing them. So first they hear him, they talk for maybe 10 seconds, and then it's dropped. That means they can't hear each other anymore. Brian flies for hours, terrified. Every 10 minutes, he makes the same call for help over the radio. He does this 17 times. 17 times 10, 170 minutes, 3 hours. So he keeps flying for 3 hours. And every 10 minutes over the radio calls for help, and no one answers. Okay? Brian realizes either the plane will run out of gas or he will have to do an emergency landing. So either no gas or emergency landing, and he needs a clearing to land. And there aren't any. There are just trees. There are no clearings. He will have to land in water. Okay, so he can do it now or he can wait until there's no fuel. But at the end of the chapter, the decision is made for him. The plane runs out of fuel and the engine turns off. All right, so join us next week to see what happens to Brian with his emergency landing. Okay, see you next time. Goodbye.